Welcome back, friends. And we've got a week of fall training camp in the books. So we've got some football content, some real live football practice content to talk about. We're going to get to all of that in our 7 from 77. And I'm really excited about this week's guest that we have on the audio side, Giovanni El-Hadi, offensive lineman. If that doesn't get you excited, I'm not sure what will. And maybe the only thing that gets you more excited is a Bryce Underwood conversation. But we'll get to that in due time. He's under lock and key because he is a freshman. And freshmen are best seen and not heard. We will eventually hear from him. But I want to let you know what's going on MGoBlue Podcasts. And that might be a quote from 1997, 1998. And it may be outdated now because more freshmen play. But Defend the Block is out, and a great conversation with women's basketball head coach Kim Barnes-Arico. Always love hearing from all of our head coaches, but at this time, because we don't have Conquering Heroes will return once everybody is back in the building, so to speak, or at least on campus. We'll bring that back this fall. But right now, I want to bring in the voice of Michigan basketball, and that is Mr. Brian Bush. Brian, are you as fired up as I am for practice? That's all we're talking about right now is practice. I'll go full Allen Iverson on you. Practice.
Yes, not a game. We're talking practice. But yes, how can we not be fired up? We are now in the month where there will be Michigan football. We are in the month where we are gearing up for New Mexico and then the trip to Oklahoma, all of it. It's big time. So, John, I want to get right to it with our 7 from 77. And we simply start with your early returns from camp, your initial takeaways from the first week or so.
My eyes have been frequently on a lot of the young guys, a lot of the areas where we have question marks. And those question marks are mostly on offense. We'll talk defense, and I'll pay more attention to those guys. It's kind of inherent, right? When you're watching the offensive guys, you also see what's going on defense. And Zeke Berry, as advertised, he's having a great camp. Defensive line, those guys are going to be spring chickens, fresh as daisies, because there are so many guys that are going to be productive up front, and they're rotating those guys through, getting lots of reps for all of those defensive linemen, the linebackers. Defense is going to be just fine, and we'll hear from Wink in just a little bit. But offensively, what I like about let's just start with the offense in general. I like what I'm seeing from Chip Lindsey in regards to how they're constructing this offense. Still going to be a run-first offense. I think everybody has that question. Is Chip Lindsey going to be a guy that airs it out? Is this an air raid offense? No, it's not. There's still going to be a lot of run game in this. But and it's I can't tell you right now because we haven't played New Mexico. We haven't played Oklahoma. What are we doing in the first quarter to set things up for the second quarter? How are we positioning and using Max Bredesen in his motions, in where he's lined up? I could tell you what it looks like, and it's very similar to the offenses that we saw last year in regards to the run game. But I want to see what are some of those alignments, what are some of those personnel groups, and how does it relate to what they're doing in the third and fourth quarters? Those are going to be reactions at game time, and I'll get a chance to see some scrimmages. When we do, I'll give you as much as I possibly can on what we're seeing. But the biggest question marks are quarterback, receiver, and offensive line. So pretty much the entire offense. And it's still sorting things out up front, a lot of combinations up front. And one of the things that you're going to hear from Giovanni El-Hadi is Lawrence Hatter, how big of a dude he is, and how much he eats. But like what I'm seeing from all of these guys that are out there, the competition is fierce. And Evan Link has done a really nice job, like we saw in the bowl game, going from right tackle to left tackle. I think his natural position is guard, but he is doing a tremendous job of holding down the fort and putting his best foot forward to be that left tackle. The other thing that you'll hear, and this is not just talking to Giovanni El-Hadi, but you talk to the other offensive linemen, you talk to Grant Newsome, talk to Chip Lindsey, how smart Andrew Babalola is. Now, being smart and being a good football player sometimes doesn't go hand in hand, because you got to have a couple of screws loose. You got to know that, or not know that when I do this, it's really going to be uncomfortable. And smart guys sometimes outthink themselves in regards to, well, maybe I want to put my hat here. Maybe I want to do this. Maybe I want to try and outthink these guys. That's not what we're talking about when I'm talking about Andrew Babalola. He is picking up the offense, the calls. He is recognizing defenses at a very impressive rate. And that's something that is unique to him. It's not inherent to freshmen, and sometimes it takes you a couple of years. So that's where I think he is really taking some big steps. Now, where he needs to progress, if he is to ultimately win that left tackle spot, is just in terms of technique and confidence, right? He's a young guy. He's trying new things out. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. What I like about him is he's willing to try new techniques. And whether it's Grant, whether it's Juan Castillo, no matter who it is, even if I mentioned something to him, he is willing to try some new things and see if they work. And it's not just a one-off. If they don't work, okay, you try something new. Generally it doesn't work, but how does it feel? Is it putting you in position for success? And sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes it's no. Sometimes it's, hey, let's put that back on the back burner and we'll work on that the next time we get to the offseason in January, late January and February of this year, next year. But it's, he's doing a nice job of adjusting his sets to the speed that he didn't see in high school, but he is seeing now. And those are some things that I like about him. Going to have to continue to work his hands. Greg Crippen, I think that the extra weight that he has put on this year is really showing at practice, because as I mentioned, I talked about some of those defensive linemen. They're all seem like they're 6'3", 320, 325 pounds. They're bowling balls, and they're strong, they're powerful, they're low. He's doing a nice job of getting underneath them in his pass protection, his adjustments. He's not getting off balance. He seems to be much more patient with how he's using his hands and how he's replacing his hands. Those are some techniques that he's worked on this offseason that I really like. In terms of the quarterback position, it's, again, I'm not going to break any news here. I'm not going to tell you who the starter is. There is no starter right now. They're all getting great reps. And what I like, a couple of the early reps, what we saw in the spring game had somewhat carried over to the beginning of fall camp, where some of the passes that I saw from Bryce were a little bit high. But what I liked was the adjustment coming back and the thought process says, okay, I had an open receiver. I got really excited and I tried to drill this ball in there. You know what? That's going to happen, but you got to figure, touch is the hardest thing for a quarterback to learn. If there's a guy coming across the formation, hey, sometimes I got to zip a ball in there, and I'm going to be throwing that one at 80, 85 miles an hour. He's just going to have to, man up and catch that ball. Other times when you've got a fade route, instead of put a little air under it, allow your guys to run underneath it. Those are the types of things that he is doing. And just as I talked about Andrew Babalola, it's never the same mistake twice. There's new mistakes to be made. They're going to be making mistakes I made mistakes all the way till my final year. And then there were just so many that they said, we don't want you back. They're going to continue to make mistakes, but they need to be new mistakes. They need to learn from those. And that's what I'm seeing from Bryce is there's always going to be new mistakes. There's going to be new defense. Wink is going to throw everything at you. And you're not going to see anything more from other defenses than what you see at Wink during practice. That's one of the great things about practicing against this defense and where they are. I like the relationship that he is building with these receivers, the chemistry that he's building. And it's really the same thing with Mikey Keene. Mikey Keene's got a lot of snaps under his belt. And you could tell the difference when he's on the field. There's just a little, if you've ever been on the field with a young quarterback and you've been on the field with a guy that has done it for 4 years, there's just a different confidence that they walk around with. And it's not necessarily a bad thing for Bryce. It's just different. And he's very calm, cool, collected. There's just some things Bryce can do that he can't do. And there's some things that he can do because he is calm that he sees because he's seen it 100 times or 1,000 times. And so both of those guys look really good. I like the fact that we've got two quarterbacks, and I'll throw Jaden Davis in there as well. Still working on his release, still working on the throw in motion, but he's got a gun for an arm. So at that position, you're going to need at least 2, if not 3 quarterbacks to run the table in the Big Ten, in a college football season, and the college football playoffs. I have a lot of confidence in all 3 of those guys that if they are in there, they're going to get the job done. Receiver, it's still, working through the numbers, working through the players. Having Goodwin in there has been nice. Donovan McCulley, love, and we talked about it last week. The correlation or the comparison that was made between him and Nico Collins, it's certainly there. Now what I need to see from him is a little bit more aggression at the top of some of those passes where we're talking about those 50-50 balls where I'll go back to the Iowa game in, I don't remember what year it was, but it was Nico Collins. There's a play over the middle. He goes up and attacks the ball. Those are the type of things that these guys are working on, and he has that in his skill set. I've seen it, need to see it every time. Fred Moore, speed is there. That's the guy that I think is going to be the deep threat. And really excited about what I see from him. Even Samaj Morgan, I talked about him being more of a kind of that universal tool of, guys going back and forth and some reverses, some things like some, wide receiver screens. He'll excel at those, but I really like the adjustments he's made to some of his routes. They're much crisper, much cleaner, and the route combinations. And I could talk all day about what I'm seeing from this offense. And Brian, I thank you for your patience, nodding your head in agreement. I'll probably repeat myself as we continue to go down this list, but you asked the question, what have I seen? And I'm seeing all of it.
Yeah. A huge mistake by leaving it so open. And that might be the longest answer in the Trenches history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and thank you for this episode. We'll talk to you next week.
I almost made that joke too. That was great. All right. We need to lock in here. That was amazing. Number 2 on our 7 from 77. Both coordinators spoke over the weekend about as long as John's first answer here. As you'd expect, there were a lot of questions about the quarterback position. Here is the aforementioned offensive coordinator, Chip Lindsey, on when is ideal to have that QB1 determined.
I just want to know when, as soon as you can. I mean, that's the goal. I do think that, we have a good plan on, competition and getting guys reps. And I think more than just getting reps, put them in different situations. And it takes time to do that. For instance, you can have so many days of what they call install, right? Usually base downs and so forth. But then as you get to third down, you don't do that early in camp sometimes as you get to red zone. So I think for us, we're trying to rotate those guys and put them all in those different situations and see how they respond, because I think really the key to playing good quarterback is understanding situational football and making great decisions. And they're all competitive, they're all smart, they're all doing a great job when they get their reps. But when the heat's on and you're in those tight moments, who can run the team and who can make the best decisions is the key.
So Chip talked about later in the press conference liking the ECU transfer, the late add Jake Garcia. When asked about Mikey Keene, who missed all of spring work, he said he can still win the job, noting that Mikey has played in an offense similar to what Lindsey and the Wolverines are developing here. Your thoughts on the timeline of all of this?
Well, sooner is always better than later. And it doesn't need to be made public, but just to the team, hey, this is our guy, this we're going with. This is the guy that's going to get all the reps with the first offensive line, with the running backs, continue to build that chemistry that I was talking about, that I'm watching Bryce and Mikey develop with the receivers. And it's about communication. And, it's as simple as the voice and the cadence of, I know that, there's not always a verbal cadence now. There's a lot of clapping involved. It's understanding and anticipating some of those. That's the beauty of the advantage of the offense is when that ball is going to be snapped. And if you are hesitant because, well, I haven't heard this voice as much as I've heard the other voice, or there's always this interchange. That's why it's best to be named early. But like Coach Lindsey just talked about, and can you imagine how long it would take if he had that same answer that I had on the first one? We'd be here for 20 minutes. Because he is very methodical and he's going to take his time in answering every question. That's just the way he talks. That's that Southern drawl that he has. But the quarterback position, it's who is going to give this team the best chance to win. That's the easy answer. But what does that entail? It's, 1st and 10. There's a lot that a quarterback goes through in putting you in the right play, making the right reads. After the snap of the ball, things are going to change, but then it changes on 2nd and long. It changes on 3rd and short, goal line, short yardage, all of those different situations. And you got to have a guy that understands the offense, how it's operating, and you need to go to the line of scrimmage with an audible, with something that you could check out of. If you're looking at it going, hey, we're running the off tackle on the right side, but they seem to have 6 guys lined up in that gap. It's a little bit of an exaggeration, but if you see a play is not going to be successful, then you've got to be able to adjust and get out of it. And sometimes it might just be, hey, I'm not going to force it, call a timeout. The quarterback has that power. And it's other things too. It's just getting lined up. All right. Do we have 11 guys on the field? When you've been on the field long enough and you kind of do that count without even recognize it, in a formation, I'm supposed to have 3 on the right, 2 on the left. I've got 4 over here. I've got 1 over here. Somebody needs to go over. Making sure you get to the line of scrimmage quick enough so that you can make those adjustments. Make sure guys are on the ball. Make sure that everybody understands what the snap count is or what the clap count is. And so it will take some time because Mikey is new to the system, even though it might be a similar one. Terminology is going to be different. Cadence is going to be different. And obviously Bryce is new. Jaden Davis, everybody's new to this system because it's a new voice in Chip Lindsey. So it will take a little bit of time moving forward. As obviously with Bryce here and Jaden Davis here, you'll be able to make that decision much earlier in future camps.
Number 3 on our 7 from 77. All of that is kind of the backdrop, the who, what, where, when, and why. As for the how will QB1 be determined? Once again, here is a clip from over the weekend with offensive coordinator Chip Lindsey.
Whoever affects the other 10 guys the best, whoever can manage the whole offense, communication, like I said, getting us in and out of the right place, making sure our protections, we're in the right protection and so forth, and just kind of who has that ability to affect the others. I think playing quarterback is such a leadership type position, right? I mean, you've got to have the right mindset. I think you got to have the right approach. The best guys that I've had, they're not always just the loudest and guys that holler and scream, and they're the guys that can motivate the other guys. And also learning how certain guys are motivated.
There's no question, and it has to be a leadership position. And some of that is, it's learned. Some of that is inherent, and whether you have it or you don't, and it's motivating guys. And there's also this, we talk about tempo all the time. When you play a team that, hey, they get to the line of scrimmage and they want to go fast, they want to control the tempo of the game. This offense is going to have times where, hey, we need to get to the line of scrimmage and run a play. Other times it's, hey, we're going to slow things up. It's a feel for the quarterback, and it's communicating those things to the guys. And I'll give you an example of, the quarterback has to be that leader. I was the captain of that 97 team, the offensive captain. But when we were playing the game, the guy that was going to handle the ball, the guy with the voice, the guy in the huddle calling the plays, the guy that had to be the leader on the field was Brian Greasy. And he stepped up in every, single moment to fill that role. And you've got to have a quarterback that's able to do that. And these guys are learning that process right now.
Number 4 on our 7 from 77. Let's talk a little bit about a different offensive position. The last clip of note from Chip Lindsey's press conference, his thoughts on the wide receiver group and a pretty lofty expectation in terms of the receivers' depth.
Our goal is to have, if you were really if in a perfect world, you'd want 6 guys who you feel really good about playing all the time and letting them kind of rotate. Hard for those wideouts to play 70 snaps a game, 80 snaps, whatever it is, So because, there's a lot of running involved in there. And here at Michigan, we're going to go block some too. So they're going to have to be physical. So I think for us, it's, getting Kendrick Bell back, getting, having obviously the guys we had in the spring, that was huge. That helps us some, I think. But at the end of the day, it's a really good competition. And they're being pushed on, hey, do we get lined up right? Do we convert the route right if it's a choice route or something like that? And competition's good for everybody.
It does feel, John, like Michigan is a little ways away from having 6 receivers ready to play. And that's a lofty goal early in camp, all of it. But how can they get as close as possible by August 30th to have the type of receiver depth that Chip desires?
Well, I mean, I think you got 3 or 4 guys that you could count on right away, and that's McCulley, Moore, Morgan, Peyton O'Leary. I'll throw him in there. Guys that are a little bit more veteran. They've been around, and the offense is new, but it's not completely new. And they're going to have that experience out there. Anthony Simpson, a transfer, redshirt senior, right? He's got experience. Those things have to come to the forefront. Then when they get Kendrick Bell back, that adds to the competition. It adds to, and then once you get guys that understand the route combinations and they're on the same page with the quarterback, and some of the miscues right now is just simply reading the defense, making sure that whoever the quarterback is seeing the same thing as the wide receivers are. So when you have some of those choice routes and you're going to break one off because you got somebody over the top, you both seeing the same thing. You're on the same page. And if there's a miscommunication, all right, let's get back to the huddle. Let's talk about this. What did you see as a receiver? Well, this is how I saw it. And quarterback, same thing. And then, Chip Lindsey obviously is there. Sharon is there. Okay, this is, and they have this advantage right now of having film actually on the field to be able to see it and analyze it in the moment, and then go back out there if they need to repeat and do the same thing. And now you can see it in real time, and you don't have to wait for a meeting. You don't have to watch, and there's just that gap is closed. So that's an advantage that they have right now. But I am really excited about what I'm seeing from these receivers. And competition breeds success. Every receiver wants the ball. Every quarterback wants to be under center. Anybody wants to be on the field. How are you going to earn those reps? That's what it comes down to right now. How are you going to earn those reps and those opportunities? Because being trusted with the ball, Mike Hart used to say, hey, the ball is the program. You got to be able to be trusted to run the right routes, because if you don't, you leave it susceptible to an interception. When you catch the ball, first of all, you got to catch the ball. Second of all, you've got to be able to protect it when you get tackled. All of those things are going to go into how they evaluate these receivers, who ends up being, wide receiver 1, 2, 3, all the way down the list, and who's going to be trusted if somebody goes down. Who's the next man up?
Number 5 on our 7 from 77. Defensive coordinator Wink Martindale also spoke over the weekend. He wasn't quite as revealing. A lot of it's early and we'll see type of answers, and that's pretty common for the veteran coach who's been around a time or two, certainly on the media side. What's that?
Not a lot of words.
A good amount of words, right. Not a lot of direction necessarily to real answers. Wink is genuine. He has fun with it. I love listening to him talk.
Well, me too.
It's just not a whole lot to break down is how I would interpret it. And the one area that I think is worth bringing up is this clip on, I think, maybe the most important word for Wink Martindale: depth.
Every year you start off down at the foundation. You tear it down. Doesn't matter what happened in the past or anything else. You take the defense and, you start from the foundation and build it back up. And that's the same thing as a football player too. So what are we working on right now? Fundamentals, from stance, start, technique, steps, tackling. We'll do takeaway drills, all those things that you see, early, probably in everybody's camp. But, we're taking our time as we do this. And, I told you all last spring about our depth. I think we have more depth. And, we'll see where it all ends up here.
It's good to hear that Wink thinks that this team has more depth, because as we talked about before last season, as we kind of learned in real time early on in the season, Wink's going to shuffle guys in and out. Depth is a critical piece of what this team wants to do defensively. And I think it's a big reason why Michigan closed the way that they did last year.
It is. And when you're talking about that depth and rotating guys in and out, right, and everyone wants to know, okay, well, offensive linemen play every snap, but defensive linemen rotate through. It's because they are literally chasing the ball down every time. And I know I gave Trey Williams a hard time about that. But first of all, Trey Williams, Damon Payne, new to Michigan, right? New to this, but they are veteran players. Rayshawn Benny, veteran player. Derek Moore. I mean, I could go down the list, But the 2 deep, even the 3 deep, you're talking about guys that have been around for going on their 3rd year, if not 4th, 5th, and in Trey Williams' case, the 6th year. Like, this is a very veteran defense. So when Wink talks about stance, start, hand, hat and hand placement, they're yeah, that's where they started, but you can go through those pretty quickly, establish your base, and then you could start building on that base quickly because you have so many veteran players. Derek Moore, he's been around for a long time. This is his 4th year. TJ Guy, he's been around for a long time. Even one of the youngest guys, Dom Nichols, this is his 2nd year. So he knows nothing other than the voice of Wink Martindale and the expectations that Wink has. So you could build on some of those basics quickly and then start getting to some of the more complicated concepts. Those young guys are going to come along and they're going to be, drinking through a fire hose, but they'll be just fine. And you'll start to see, that's why you start to see some of those younger guys in week 6, 7, 8 working into the rotation because they're starting to understand, and their base takes a little bit longer to build, and it just takes longer to stack everything else on top of it.
Number 6 on our 7 from 77, staying on the defense, TJ Guy met with the media on Monday. When asked about the D-line, he said in part, and you see it on the bottom of our video stream here, same product, different numbers, different guys out there. Now, we have talked plenty about the depth up front. I think we both believe it is real. But they are replacing 2 top 13 NFL draft picks in Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. Do you expect the same product even without those guys?
I totally do. And, when you're talking about rotating 6 guys through at that defensive tackle position, no one's got the same skill set as a Mason Graham or a Kenneth Grant. They're just not built that way. But they are still going to be very productive because they're going to be fresh every time they're in there. So if it's a pass rush, hey, pin your ears back and give them your best pass rush move. They also understand, if I'm supposed to hit that A gap, what does it mean for Jayshon Barham if he's coming in the B gap, or Ernie Hausman? Like, all of those different things. When you have veteran guys like that, you may not see the same numbers from some of those defensive tackles as an individual, but I think as a group, you're going to see very similar numbers. And I said this coming out of the bowl game as a possibility, and what I'm seeing on the field, it's starting to really show up for me. This is a defense, while you don't have the Kenneth Grant, the Mason Graham, I think could be a much better defense than they had last year over 12 games. We started to see this, as you mentioned it, right? The Northwestern, Ohio State, those were great performances. Great, and they played as
Indiana.
a great
Indiana was a tremendous defensive performance.
But I think they hit the ground running early this year at a much higher level, and you may actually see the numbers be better than they were last year as a group, not just 1 or 2 individuals, but as a group.
And it's going to have to be with the schedule that Michigan has and the potential inexperience offensively. Tough road games, all of it. It'll be interesting. Number 7 on our 7 from 77. We talked about it. If you are watching, we will have an audio-only interview with Giovanni El-Hadi on the podcast, which this will go on Wednesday morning along MGoBlue Podcasts. If you're just listening, we encourage you to join us every Tuesday, 11:15 a.m., along with almost 100 live on YouTube. We thank all those who are following along. John, it's a wide-ranging conversation you shared with Gio. Technically, you recorded it on Monday for Wednesday's episode. Give fans a little preview, because this is a doozy between a guy who he even referenced your first podcast conversation with Gio 3 years ago now.
It's the sense of urgency that he is attacking this year with. This is his last year. This is his last opportunity for this to be his offensive line, for this to be his team, to go out as, you're going to go out as Big Ten champs or at least have a chance to play the Big Ten championship game, or is it going to be an 8-4 season, 9-3 season? Oh, that's nice. But I feel that sense of urgency, and I see it on the practice field. And I know that there's a lot of different ways to lead, but you have to have some guys up front that are willing to stick their neck out and say, hey, first of all, you got to show. So it's doing everything the right way. And if you're not doing things the right way, then nobody's going to listen to you, because it's going to fall on deaf ears. But I'm seeing it from Gio. I'm seeing it from Greg Crippen. I'm even seeing it from Evan Link, right? There's a certain standard that has to be upheld. And they don't care. They care if they start or if they play and how much they play. But they want to make sure that if for some reason something happens to me, who's the next guy in? Are they prepared and ready to go? That's the sense of urgency of not just taking care of your own business, but making sure that this offensive line, no matter who is in, who is out, is absolutely ready to go at any single moment. And I asked him that question because he brought it up. The down in Nebraska, right? Trevor Keegan goes down, and there goes Giovanni El-Hadi. And I didn't learn until later that Sharon didn't put him in. It was
Gio put him in.
Gio put him in. And you've got to have that. You've got to have that sense of urgency. If somebody goes down, boom, I don't want to waste the timeout. And in that game, timeouts were precious. And so you can't waste a moment. Somebody has to be in, and you have to be ready to go in the moment. And he has shared that with the offensive line. So if he's the starting left guard and his backup is, I don't know, say it's Blake Frazier or even Avery Gash, who's a freshman, like, you have to be ready at any moment. If you're not, you're going to be passed over, and it's going to cost our team. And so that sense of urgency throughout the entire conversation, when we talked about his weight and we talked about him moving from right to left, and, last year it was left to right, all of that's a wide-ranging conversation, as well as how he likes his steak cooked, and the most finicky eater on the offensive line, the biggest eater on the offensive line, all of those things we talk about. We have some fun with it, but it was really, my takeaway was his sense of urgency, how quickly he got here, and how quickly time has passed, and he knows this is his last shot.
All right. So on the audio side, we transitioned to that conversation with Giovanni El-Hadi. On the audio, or on the video side, let's talk coaches poll. We'll talk athletic Bruce Feldman's freaks. But I did want to start with a great question in the comments from our guy, Ferris Khan. If you were to only go to one road game this year, would you pick Oklahoma, Nebraska, or USC? I think I agree with the second part of the statement. If you win two of those three games, you think they make the playoff. Yeah, I think 10-2, you're pretty much locked in. If it's 9-3, you're going to need a lot of help. Maybe we will get to one day where conversation around just straight record might not be the same as I feel like it is now. Anyways, I will throw in the other road game to include in this conversation, John, is the Northwestern game, because it's at Wrigley Field. So
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah, and that one, it's a one of a kind thing, but likely so is Oklahoma. So to me, it's down to those two, because Big Ten, we will go to Nebraska again, we'll go to USC again. What would you pick if you could select one?
That's a tough one, because selfishly, I would almost say Wrigley Field, because I want to walk the same halls as Harry Carey. I've had a chance to do that with the legendary voices at the Rose Bowl, in different stops along the way in the Big Ten, some legendary voices. So, selfishly, I get a chance to sit in some of those seats, but I think it's got to be Oklahoma, simply because Oklahoma and Michigan, they've never played on their home campuses. So Michigan's never been to Norman, and Oklahoma has never been to Ann Arbor. They had one bowl game, I think it was 77, that Oklahoma won. And so you just don't know when is the next time, if ever, Michigan will play in Norman, Oklahoma. I don't know what Norman's like, and I wouldn't even venture a guess, but I'd like to be able to feel and see and hear and smell what it's like at one of the great football programs that college football has known. Now, whether they're there or not this year really doesn't matter to me. It's the program itself. And you can make that argument for USC. I don't know where they're going to be with Lincoln Riley this year, but we will get a chance to go back to the Coliseum at some point. And it may be 4 or 5 years down the road, but I think it's got to be Norman that I would choose to go to. Although we'll probably never play in Wrigley again either. So, but the matchup's not quite there.
Correct. And with Wrigley, if I could guarantee knowing where I was sitting at Wrigley, it'd be a little bit different because there's going to be some intriguing sight lines that, at the outset is cool, but then you get to actually watching the game that might be a little bit of a pain. Again, it is still 100% worth it. The fact that we're putting that game up over Nebraska and USC shows just how strong it is, but 6:30 local, Norman, Oklahoma, you got to pick that.
Same argument we heard about the sight lines of Major League Baseball. Was it the Braves and the Reds playing in Bristol? Where
I think the storyline was more the rain lines.
The rain and the food, and I got all that. But one of the complaints was, sight lines. Well, okay, you're going. It's not a football stadium at Wrigley, right? It wasn't built specifically for football, but there's been so much history at Wrigley. There's so much history and uniqueness of watching a Major League Baseball game at a NASCAR track that you accept some of the sacrifices when you go to one of those events.
For sure. And that's one of those things. If we're going to pick it over Oklahoma, I want to be able to see the game well.
Right.
And that's why I go with Oklahoma. Brian, the podcast guy, sends to Brian, the PlayStation guy, has Justin Tress upheld the standard that Ben Herbert left. If you missed it a couple weeks ago on the audio podcast, John had a great conversation with Tress. How would you interpret that?
100%. What I like about Justin Tress is, there are some things obviously that Ben Herbert did that was elite. And he's carried those things over, but in every single year, there's new developments, there's new research, there's new technology. And when I was here with Mike Gittleson, he was huge in the hammer strength machines and some of the machines in helping develop and tweak some of those so that they better served football players, specifically his guys that he was working out. Justin Tress is doing the same thing. He talked a little bit about that in the podcast and one of the sleds and making sure that we had handles, at the right position for offensive and defensive linemen to make it more effective, to make it more realistic and game-like. And Herbert was doing that. Justin Tress is doing the same thing. And every year, your team is going to need something a little bit different. Every guy needs something a little bit different. The amount of work that goes in behind the scenes to evaluate one of 120 guys and making sure that you're taking care of his needs, and then the next guy right next to him, a little bit different, and a little bit different, and a little. All of a sudden, you get down the road, and you're trying to accomplish the same things, but you are doing it in a completely different manner because everybody's body responds differently. And Justin Tress has done I put them both together. But has done a tremendous
Justin
job.
Herbert is with the Chargers now, like Jim and Ben.
Right. But Tress has done a tremendous job of keeping things fresh, keeping things demanding, which is one of the great attributes that I thought Ben Herbert had was demanding an elite level of training in the offseason, and Tress is doing the exact same thing.
What I will say is Ben Herbert still is the superior podcast voice guy. When he spoke, you're like sitting up straight. I'm like, I hope he doesn't reach through the podcast audio and demand me to go run some sprints.
Yeah.
But Herbert's got a little more than a decade on Tress, so that can still be developed. Otherwise, I agree.
Yeah, but there's you're never going to change Tress's voice to sound like.
It doesn't have to be. I should say more the inflection.
His inflection.
The performance, the pauses. Ben Herbert was a master at knowing when to pause and just let something sink for a second in an interview.
Yeah.
He was one of our first, wasn't he in the trenches episode 1 or 2 or 3 or something? He was early.
Well, I do as much as I can to avoid episode 1. I think we've come light years from that one. I listened to that one enough to learn, and hopefully I'm not making those mistakes again.
That was before I was even an on-air thing. That was I was just, hey John, go do this. Go get him, bud.
That was we learned. Let's just say that.
Sure did. Dave in the D, it sounds like he's made his decision, wanting the USC SoCal Sunshine. Agreed. That is nice. However, I still want Norman.
Yeah, I mean, and I have no idea what time that game is going to be played. It might not even be SoCal Sunshine by the time.
Well, it won't be any later than 4:30 local, so it'll be sunny most of that because that's the 7:30 Eastern.
Yeah,
time
but we won't get a chance to see the sun set on the San Gabriel Mountains. It'll be setting on the
4 out of 10
LA.
at best on that. Yeah, that's okay. Hey, maybe we'll be out there again.
Yes, we will.
Quarterfinal. I'm saying this year. I know we'll be out there again, but I'm saying quarterfinal this year.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I said we will.
Lock it in. Let's talk about the preseason poll. You see it scrolling at the bottom there. Top 5 being Texas, Ohio State, Penn State, Georgia, Notre Dame. What that means is that week 1, Texas, Ohio State will be a 1 versus 2 matchup in the preseason poll. We discussed last week that the unofficial Big Ten poll from Cleveland.com had Penn State as the Big Ten favorite. Thoughts? I do believe Texas should probably be the preseason number 1.
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason why they shouldn't. They return a lot of talent. And while Manning wasn't their starting quarterback, he was for a couple of games, and he's in that system, the Sarkisian system. He knows what the expectations are. He's worked at those receivers. So, okay, there's only 2 teams in the top 10 that are even returning starting quarterbacks that were with their university last year. That's the absurdity of, what is now free agency in college football and the movement of players. But Arch Manning he's the ultimate dual threat. I don't know where he got his speed from because it wasn't one of his uncles. But he's a guy that does have the threat of taking it to the house on the ground. He's got the threat of being able to throw and distribute the ball all across. You got to show it. You got to prove it. 12 games. Can he do that? Can he stay healthy for 12 games because of his style of play? Those are questions. But for the preseason poll, I'm not surprised at all that they're the number 1 team. The question will be now, can they go wire to wire? It's a really hard thing to do, especially with the Big Ten and SEC schedules, the way they're constructed.
Remember, Arch's dad is Cooper, who was a receiver before he had to give up the game due to health reasons. So that is where it comes. But yes, the Peyton and Eli weren't quite dual threats. They're more pocket quarterbacks.
Yes. Great drop back throwers.
Yes, very much so. 6 through 10, Clemson being number 6, the top-ranked ACC team, then Oregon, Alabama, LSU, and Miami. You can see the scroll down there. Michigan at 14. I'll ask you this. What teams are you surprised that Michigan is behind in this group with Michigan at 14?
Arizona State.
That was the one that really, yeah. Arizona State was the one that stuck out to me.
Miami, just because I don't know that Mario Cristobal can be I like him. I just don't think he could be a coach that's going to take a team to extreme heights. And Carson Beck, I know we all know what he did at Georgia, or what he did and couldn't do. And was it him? Was it the coach? Was it the receivers? Was it the system? I don't have a lot of faith that he's going to be the guy that gets the U back to being the U. But other than that, I have no issue with anybody being ahead of Michigan at that point, even Illinois. When you've got a quarterback that's been there 2 years, Altmaier, and I was probably ahead of the curve in thinking that Brett Bielema and this program would be in this position. I thought maybe it would happen a couple of years ago, but it did take some time for him to get his quarterback. I think they're going to be a run-first team. And with a quarterback, the way that they have it constructed, it's very quarterback friendly. And then you look at some of the schedules as well. Now, I know it doesn't have to play into right now the preseason poll, but a lot of the big dogs don't play each other in the Big Ten. Like Michigan doesn't play Penn State. Penn State plays Oregon. And so there are some games, some schedules that seem a little bit easier than others. But again, I talk about those 2 teams in the top 10 that have returning quarterbacks. Clemson, with Klubnik being one of them, and the other one with LSU and Nussmeier. The more I watch Nussmeier, I look at this and I go, are they at 9? Is this the weight of Brian Kelly somewhat holding them back? He's a tremendous coach, but he's really struggled to take LSU and get them over the top. how much of Clemson and is them being ranked 6 simply they're one of the only teams with a returning starting quarterback. And I know he is a Heisman hopeful, but Dabo Swinney, and maybe it's Dabo raising them up because he's a coach that's got 2 national titles. The ACC, I just don't think that they're going to be prepared enough when they make the college football playoffs to play against and beat an SEC team once or twice, or a Big Ten team once or twice.
LSU is interesting because remember, I believe this is correct. Brian Kelly has not won an opener.
No,
at LSU, and this year it's against Clemson, and it's a field goal game. So, but I mean that if I were running a college football program, I don't think I'd ever schedule a marquee game week 1. Week 2 to me is the right approach, just to get that one off the gate. And also to make sure that TV doesn't move it to a Thursday or a Sunday or a Monday or anything like that. So that would be a priority for me. But yeah, I do wonder. And if LSU does beat Clemson week 1, then yeah, I mean, everything's on the table because I think we all understand that Clemson can be pretty good. They got a ton of returning starters. Dabo's been there before. It feels like the next potentially best Clemson team. And yes, I did confirm this. Michigan was indeed ranked preseason number 14 in 1997.
Oh,
so that's a good omen.
There you go. Yeah. We'll see.
Ferris also saying Texas, I looked up, Texas is a 3-point dog. So it's basically odds makers have that game a coin flip. So I think odds makers basically have Texas and Ohio State is the same. It's in Columbus, so they give 3 points to the Buckeyes. That it is. But I like what Brian says here. The more disrespected we are in the rankings, the better. Just win games. And we're going to learn very early because Michigan is going to be basically a coin flip according to prognosticators for Oklahoma. They are a slight favorite in look-ahead lines against Nebraska, and I expect something similar against USC in week 6. These things can change. It can all ebb and flow depending on how things go early. But, yeah, I mean.
I don't see being ranked 14 in a preseason poll as being tremendously disrespectful. Like I would, like I said, I question against Arizona State. So, okay, you're 13 or Miami, the bump you up to 12.
Yeah.
What's the big difference between 12 and 14? I just don't see it.
Don't be 14 in December. Like that's the big key now, right? Like don't be on the outside looking at.
Yeah.
I think some of the 23 rankings and 22 rankings were more disrespectful, even though Michigan was largely in the top 5 all those years. And again, it ultimately, who gives a rip? Frankly, I'd be fine with getting rid of preseason polls because we all know Michigan,
You're
Oklahoma,
not doing morning
Texas,
radio.
Ohio State, LSU, Clemson. We all know those games are going to be big. What'd you say?
You're not doing morning radio. Don't get rid of the preseason polls. We got to have something to talk about at this time of the year. We're talking about practice.
4 hours a day, every weekday. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how Cookies does it, but poor guy.
I'm the one with the hard job.
Oh, come on. I actually think Heather's the one with the hard job. Let's be honest here.
I admit that one.
Yeah, there you go. I did want to touch on, because it's always a fun feature every year. 2 Wolverines are Freaks. That is Bruce Feldman's annual series on The Athletic, which is awesome. And the 2 for the Wolverines are a couple of their German influences who, hey, Michigan might be going to Germany next year. That's pretty cool. Second straight year, Marlon Klein's on the list. Feldman mentioning his top speed of 21.75 miles an hour, 9'7" broad jump, and he ran a 6.89 in the 3-cone drill, which is 0.05 of a second faster than Colston Loveland. And then also a guy who many Wolverines fans might not have heard much, if at all, of any of him, Manuel Beigel. He is a fellow German product, started playing football in 2020, redshirted last year, up to 315 as a defensive lineman. He squats 425 and has the top lineman number on the reactive plyo stairs at 2.64 seconds. That's the jumping up those big steps, correct?
Yeah,
that we've seen the videos of, which I mean good Lord.
Yeah.
But we'll see if Beigel has any impact on this year. Ika Wuna, Micah Kaapana were also mentioned in those blurbs, but it's always pretty fun to see not just the Michigan names, but also you see some of the FCS D2 guys who are on the list who, you just see some of the athleticism is remarkable. It's amazing how many players out there across the country have some just ridiculous metrics on them.
Oh, I mean, when you're talking about the best of the best, coming out of high school and, for those 3 or 4 or 5 years, sometimes now 6, 7, 8, 9 years that they spend in college, it is remarkable to see how freakish some of their skill sets are. Guys that are benching. I know there's a recruit. I don't know his name. I'm not even sure who's recruiting him, but who just did the 225. And if he had been in the combine this last year, he's a senior in high school, would have been 2 away from this year's combine record. Like, there are just some unbelievable athletes. And that's the beautiful thing about watching college football. You get a chance to see so many remarkable athletes. Now the question is, can you take that skill set? How does it translate to playing football? And Marlon Klein, he's fast. That's great. 21.75 miles per hour. Like, anytime I see one of those speed signs or the radar things on the sideline, sometimes if it's in a neighborhood, my kids and I will pull over and we'll race and, see who gets to 12 or 13 miles per hour. That's fast. Not the 12 or 13 miles an hour. The 21.75 is fast. But now we need to see the production on the field. Yep. All right. Hey, Colston Loveland's no longer here. It is Marlon Klein's job to take and do with what he can possibly do with. Let's see all of that speed. Let's see that agility. Let's see that vertical. Let's see all of that stuff that puts you on this freak list. Let's get some freaky stats on Saturdays.
Number 1 freak was Jeremiah Smith. No real surprise there.
He'll be there until he is in the NFL.
Yeah. But cool to see a couple Wolverines on it, and always a fun feature. Bruce Feldman at The Athletic, who does it. All right. I think that's about all we have time for here today. Jon, good stuff as always. And thank you for the early stream filibuster. If you're tuned in now and you missed it, go back. If you want 10 minutes unfiltered of Jon Jansen just talking about Michigan football after 1 week of camp, we are the place for you.
Yes. I did get a little excited.
It was
it's our first week after having now a full week of camp. There's a lot to talk about.
This is why in episode 1 and 2 we learned maybe we should have some sort of filter, some sort of
buffer,
secondary voice on this, so that Jon doesn't.
I keep looking for the mute button. I'm not sure where that is. I'll find it.
I know that's why I'm the producer of this. I have it, and I mean, I've got all the power, Jon.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
All right,
I have the knowledge.
Well, that's also true. Very true. You have a specific set of skills.
Yes, but for everyone out there, hey, make sure you tell your friends. Let them know if they want to know what's going on Michigan football. I am here every day. Get a chance to see all the practices. I will be as forthcoming as I possibly can, positive, negative, anywhere in between. I'll let you know what's going on with Michigan football. And I will be just as excited next week. I will be just as excited the week after. But the week after that, the 3rd week, that's game week, baby. Let's go.
Jon, any reaction as we get out of here to Brian's statement here about 1 minute of Jon Unfiltered is scary, let alone 10? Oh, I have the mute. Yeah, take that. Okay, now you're just messing with me because I turned it back.
Yeah,
I was like, wait a minute, I didn't know this was forever. Jon, I need the knowledge back.
Thanks too.
All right, for Jon, I'm Brian. We're all over the place. We'll talk to y'all next week.